thank you, Nancy, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Um, Look, Nancy has been running HR organizations, human resources, and really understanding the people side of the business for many years, um, including including going through 5 IPOs and responsible for HR for those organizations. That's a kind of an awesome achievement. And she is now the chief human resources officer at Automation Anywhere. Um, Nancy, you have a great resume. It's kind of fun to read because it's like a who's who of the business world. But I think the real question is, how did you move from comedy to HR and know that this was the career
Well,
path for you?
yes, I did intend to be a comedy writer and spent some time doing that and uh, stand up. And I'm married to my husband. We've been married 47 years this month. And when I first met him and married him, he was a singer and actor in New York. And I was a stand up comic. And one day we realized that someone was going to have to get a real job, and I lost the toss. And, as I generally tell it, I couldn't find a real job, so I went into human resources. Actually, I found that human resources gave me the ability to be creative and engage with people and the things that I had wanted in my original career choice as well. So that's what did it. I had to pay the rent. That's why I got a job.
Right, right. And that career choice seems to have worked out all right for you, Nancy. I
So
just
far, so good. The vote is still out. It's 40 years in. The vote's still a little out. Yes.
Right. Well, and as for myself, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at BP3. We started this journey, like 15 years ago at BP3, and just very excited to still be going with a great team. You've met Julia. We get to partner with great firms like Automation Anywhere, and that's what keeps it fresh, right? The technology keeps changing, but I would say, the business that we're in is about people and process and figuring out how to automate the things that none of us really want to do. And if we keep focused on that, man, the technology keeps changing, the circumstances change, but the opportunities to create value and do exciting things are still there. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
well,
People are the variable,
right. No, that's
the
right.
great
And
variable. That's what keeps it interesting. Yeah.
absolutely. And there's no real point behind business if there aren't people involved. So
Mhm.
so maybe to start with, given that HR is all about people, why should folks in HR be excited about bots and RPA?
Yeah. It's so I'll start by saying this again. I'm 117 years old. I've been married 47 years. So I've had this incredibly long career, and this is the most exciting technology I've seen in terms of human resources and the capability it gives to us as a discipline. The way I like to phrase it is, um, automation gives us access to things we've never had access to before, and things that we haven't used for a very long time, like human cranial capacity. We have used human beings in the workforce as robots primarily, and we've made them in service of capital equipment or software. Think about it. The human role is to fill in the blanks in software. In the past, it was to make certain that the assembly line functioned well, but what people really valued was that technology. And now we are moving the technology behind human beings and moving the human capability forward. The most exciting thing I can say to human resources people about this is automation gives you access to your if only list that no HR person has ever said, gee, if only I didn't have to do this executive development, I could get back to data entry and analysis, right? And so suddenly that if only list you've been sitting on all these years, if I had the resources, that capability, if I had the capacity, it frees all that up for you, and suddenly you get it. It just takes the camouflage of the industrial age away from human resources. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, that is the thing. I've never talked to someone in HR who didn't feel like if they just had a bit more time, that there was
Yes.
more value they could create for their business and more they
We've
could
been
do.
we've been trying to get out of the transactional work, I think, since they invented the transactional work in the 1920s, and so we've been, oh, please don't make me have to do all this oh my good administrivia. And that day's here. That day has happened. So yeah, it's very exciting. I'm thrilled my career extended this long so I could be part of this.
Yeah.
When I joined Automation Anywhere 4 years ago, the way Mihir Shukla, who's our CEO, kind of enticed me in was to pose a question. He said, Nancy, what's the role of human resources when 30% of the workforce isn't human? And, I thought if there's a question I'd like to answer before my career's over, that's it. The role of human resources is changing dramatically based on automation. And I'm thrilled that, I get to be a little bit of the architect of that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fascinating opportunity. I think, one of the things just sort of observationally that people have, we always try and connect with RPA. When I talk to people who aren't familiar, right, that
Yeah.
it's like, well, I don't really get it. Or you talk to people who are familiar, but maybe too focused on the tech. How do we get, can we talk about some use cases, right? Some things that might open people's eyes to opportunities within HR that are tangible, right? That they could be applying this to.
Sure. There's an RPA journey. There's many, many on ramps to this highway. When I came to Automation Anywhere, like the cobbler's children, they hadn't used a lot of automation, and we were rapidly growing, blitz scaling, expanding all over the world. And I discovered that we had 2 or 3 payrolls domestically. And then in all the countries we'd gone to, we had PEOs or outsourced payrolls of this one and another kind. And so we had about 7 different places you had to go in order to count heads. This was the big challenge. I couldn't count heads. We were growing so fast. It was all over the place. And so there was a young woman who would take 4 or 5 hours a week and get all the data from all these, from JobBite, from the HRIS system we had then, from the separate payroll system, from all the payroll systems around the world. And she would pull it all together and pull out what didn't need to be there and put in what needed to be there and turn it into a PowerPoint and walk around to all the executives and explain where their heads were, where they were against their hiring plans. So we wrote a bot to do it. And we taught the bot to do everything Sarah could do. So the bot was given permission to go into all those programs, pull all that stuff together, put it on a spreadsheet, create the pivot table, and then we just sent that out to the executives. And it went from being 4 or 5 hours a week, or I would say every time we wanted to run the report, sometimes multiple times a week, to, I don't know, it probably takes about 3 minutes to do it. And Sarah suddenly had a lot of time that got freed up for her. She was a little concerned initially about the lack of visibility she would have with the executives, but she replaced that by creating a spectacular intern program. And she got just the same kinds of visibility, only now it's around something that was not looking in the rearview mirror about how many heads we had, but looking forward into what kind of talent we could bring aboard in the future. And so literally went from transactional to strategic one day, just very, very quickly. And later said to me, not only will I never do that report manually, I'll never work for a company that does it manually because that's an IQ test they failed. And that was the first. That was our first bot. I love that bot. I'm very sentimental. And then, just like painting your house, your neighbor says, hey, wait a minute. So the next person said, I've got some boring work. I've got some really tedious thing I'm doing over here. Can I have a bot? Can I have a bot? Can I have a bot? And so today we probably have anything between 40 and 50 bots that run within HR. We've got a backlog of probably another 50 or 60 that we're building. We have probably 30 that we've retired, that they did something great for us and then we retired them. So that headcount bot. We have a bot that helped us move all the data from our old HRIS system into the new, not the configured data. That's easy. That the system identified they could do. It was the non-structured data. All those documents you have sitting in one HRS system had to be moved into the new one. And it was like 27,000 documents. So it was going to take some poor schmuck I hired. They'd have to sit there and make certain it got in the right place, get all the documents into the right file, into the right person. And Forrest White, who works with me, and Shalini Naidu wrote a bot. And that bot moved every single record without a mistake, every single one, and kept us from having to spend 4 months of somebody's time doing the most mind-numbing, tedious work. Had to be done. the bot did it. So we started with kind of low-hanging fruit. We could see here's a volume thing that human beings shouldn't do. So how can we teach the bot to do it? And then, as I said, it kind of exploded from there. And then I sent everybody to bot school. I sent everybody who works in HR to go to the 8-hour program to learn to write a bot. And every single person in HR has written a bot. And so, yeah, it was in our own organization. It was kind of organic and viral. I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. I am on mute. You would think at this point, I've figured out how to unmute successfully, but in that example that you gave, one of those examples that was around, just the volume of work that you have to do and that friction that it creates as you're trying to make a change in your organization. And one of the great use cases we saw for a bot that was temporary, mind you, but it was, onboarding, an insurance company onboarding a whole set of producers, right? Like an external third party with 11,000 producers. And the way they would have onboarded them traditionally would have taken, I think their estimate was that it would take 9 to 10 months to do it manually. And, it was something that could be 95% automated. And I think we had it done, the whole thing in 3 weeks, right? And so for them, when they're thinking about ROI, they're like, well, there's some calculation of how many hours of work we just saved, which is nice. But really, I got my sales team engaged selling, right? Because producers in insurance vernacular are salespeople in like layman's terms, right? And they're selling my insurance policies. And if I don't get them onboarded, then they're not selling my insurance. So it was a big win for them, right? Even though it was a temporary thing, super important, right? So I think there are great opportunities like that.
And when you see those opportunities, and we have a situation right now with a customer who is it's around recruiting, and they are a retail establishment right now because of the labor shortage. They want to capture candidates as soon as they can, and so the bot makes certain that as soon as somebody applies, if they meet kind of 2 or 3 basic criteria, they get responded to say, come and interview. Okay, right now, let's get you in for an interview, because they realize that getting ahead, if somebody's applying at a retail institution, they're probably applying to 6 of them. And whoever gets to them first is going to get the person. So that speed and with that volume is really important. But even when you're a smaller organization, as we are, I mean, we're much smaller. We don't have as many massive processes like that. However, even so, this past year, we've freed up the equivalent of 3 full-time heads in terms of work. We've added, which, I mean, we're coming very close to adding 10% capacity to my HR organization this year. That's big. That's a lot in terms of what taking that time, allowing people to think and create and innovate and get closer to the customer and more involved in engagement. That really moves the needle for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, since we're talking about AI and pie in this session, we've covered the pie. What are some smarter use cases, if you will, the ones where actually we need to apply some machine learning or AI to really get the most out of it?
Yeah, we've got a couple of very, very sexy bots. I have to say, we've got a couple of automations. We've automated some processes that we invented around automation. It wasn't, here's a process and it's tedious and boring. What we said is, it's not just the way we're doing it, but is what we're doing right? Could we do it better if we could have access to automation? And so a quick example, this is probably my favorite bot. The typical 9-box talent assessment process. You take a look at everybody, you lay them out on the 9-box in terms of performance and potential. We speak to performance and relevance, actually. We decided that there were lots of things wrong with that process. There's bias in the process. There's lack of precision. It sucked up enormous amounts of management time. And so we decided if we're going to suck up a lot of management time, we'd get more out of it. And so we created a bot that, let me tell you what the process is. We send a questionnaire to every manager and they fill it out for each of their employees. And the questionnaire covers things like, What's the relevant position the person is in? How are they performing against it? What kind of citizen are they in the company? And how sticky do you think they are? What do you think is their commitment to continuing their career here? Concurrently, we send a questionnaire to employees that questions them about what they're really enjoying about their career at Automation Anywhere, how are they thriving, and then what things concern them. And they also have to answer kind of a stickiness question. Not overt. These things are somewhat covert in the questions. And then in the managerial questions, those questions in each of those categories are weighted specific to each discipline. Relevance is more important in technology, perhaps, than marketing. And so we weight these questions differently. And then we have a boatload of data. I mean, it's just hundreds of thousands of pieces of data. It's just amazing. You would never do this process with human beings because you could never afford to put the human beings on this process to analyze the data. What does the bot do for us? Well, the first thing the bot does is it places the person in the 9-box grid. And now it places it exactly where it's supposed to be in the 9-box grid. Not, I think it should be in this box. And so you can see where that person is relative to other folks. You can see how close to what line they are. Are they on the border of a box? That sort of thing. So then the conversations about whether they belong in which box, it's only the people on the margins that you have to worry about. And so that just speeds things up. And there's a precision. And again, because those questions, every manager is asking the same question about every employee, we know there's a rigor of thinking that goes into this. And it's not just how well do I like them. So the bot does that for us. And then the bot goes into the bot produces a 2-page PowerPoint for every employee that goes to the manager. The first page is that 9-box grid center. And then on the upper left-hand corner is, who they are and who they report to, and also what job they're in. And then it says, hey, manager, this is how sticky you think they are. You think that they are, kind of high risk. And by the way, here's how the employee has identified themselves. They actually say they're kind of low risk. So there's something to be explored. On the upper right-hand side, the bot goes into the payroll system or the HRIS system and gets what's their comp ratio, how many invested shares do they have, and gives the manager that snapshot. And then on the lower left-hand side, it says, here are the things that this employee is really enjoying about their career. Here are the strengths we have in terms of holding them here. And so they've developed friendships. They have great respect for their manager. They're enjoying what they're learning, a whole bunch of things. And on the other side, it gives you, I should say the second page, it's a whole page of, here are some interventions you should think about with this employee this year. Basically, we give you every manager a map to, here are the things that you need to address to make certain this person is thriving. We don't just say, gee, they might need more visibility. We give them several interventions around visibility. We don't just say they may need a job rotation. We give specific ideas about what you might do for that employee. Literally, we put into the manager's hands a roadmap for how they can help that employee thrive this year. It is game changing. It's a customized set of interventions that helps the manager know what they should be putting into their agenda for all their one-on-ones for development for the coming year. Personalized development plans. It's astonishing. It would have taken, just for our pilot group that we did last year, it would have taken someone 7 months to get through that data. And we're coming through the process now. In the 1st of January, we're going to be putting these documents into the hands of all of our managers and just dislocating how people come at the relationship with the employee. So yes, you can see, I hate this bot. I love this bot. I love this bot. So that's one. We have a similar, I shouldn't say similar.
That is a pretty amazing use case.
It is. And we have one in comp that is amazing. The concept of sitting down with the manager and having them say, gee, I'm worried about, Joe Blow's comp, and what are we going to do? And so the HR person will say, yeah, let me go get the data and I'll come back to you later this week and we'll have another meeting. No, the HR person simply launches one of our ARI bots, and the ARI bot goes and gets current peer data, where they sit, what's their history. It gets outside market data, it looks at parity, it looks at gender, and it brings back a whole report that you right now in this moment, you can make decisions and not have to have another meeting, and you have far greater insight than we would pull together if we were doing it manually. So those two alone just so shift how we're dealing with people. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think you've kind of raised an interesting, just an insight there is there's a set of problems that everybody's working on. They're taking a ton of your time. If you could automate them, you would free yourself up. There's another set of problems that actually you're just not doing because it's hard, right? There's too
Right.
much work to do. You can't do it at scale. But if you introduce the right kind of automation,
Right.
then it is achievable, and then it might actually have a lot of value. And I ran across another client we worked with where they have all these individual retail stores, right? And it's a very traditional kind of family-owned business, but has gotten to some scale. And when you have several hundred locations, each with their own little P&L, the thing that
Yes.
they really needed was to compare those P&Ls across all these stores and find the trends and the interesting data points, but they needed automation to make that happen. And without it, it just wouldn't happen. The manpower needed was
That's
too
right.
much.
And so you either don't have the manpower or time. It's the problem is that even if you decide that you're going to put the people against it, the latency in the data. And that's the thing about, bots is, as we say, they don't need breaks. They never take lunch. They never sleep. They work 24/7 and they go fast. As a matter of fact, if we have a demo on the first bot I discussed, the talent development bot, we have to slow it down by a factor of like 20 in order for you to actually see it on the page. It just goes so fast. And that's one of those things that's when you realize that shrinking time, giving people back that time. I always say, if I could give you 30% of your day back in some way, 30% of the time in your day, what would you do with it? Right? Well, if we could give the world 30% of the time that has been sucked up through our industrial age mentality of work, we would cure diseases. We would invent new technologies. We would go to new planets. We would build new buildings. Human beings will do really fabulous things if you can give them the time to think about it. I believe this automation has put us on the precipice of a renaissance, that we are freeing up cranial capacity that has not been used. And by the way, that's how we came to be able to create the talent development bot. Someone actually got the time to think. It was astonishing. Yes.
Just enough headspace to actually think about
Exactly.
solving a problem.
That's right.
Well, given that, I guess, we're on both sides of the coin, right? Where do you see HR professionals really getting started with RPA, and where do you see them maybe resisting, getting
Yeah.
started, if you will, with RPA?
So I think I'll say a couple of things. I think that if you're thinking about automating your own organization, you start with you pitch to the pain. You go to the pain. I had a problem with headcount. I had to get that solved. Um, there's low-hanging fruit in every HR organization, whether it's onboarding or applicant tracking. We have issues. We use a different applicant tracking system than we HRIS system, and so we have a bot that makes certain all the information is correct. We use bots for auditing. There's lots of compliance things that bots can do for you. So if that's where your concern is, if that's what's waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's where you head. But there's a little bigger issue, I think, for HR folks, and that is whether you're automating HR. I guarantee you someone in your business is going to automate, is going to move to automation, and you're going to end up with a digital workforce of some sort. And I think as HR professionals, whether we're automating our own function or not, we have to be fluent in that language because it changes the work of human beings. And that's what we're experts in, is how humans thrive and work in the workplace. And so if you don't understand the language, don't understand what the bot's going to do, if you don't understand how that affects how you're going to design human work, then human resources becomes less relevant in terms of its ability to contribute. The future of work is not something that we're preparing. The future of work, like happened last year. This is not. So in some ways we're catching up, and unfortunately, HR is often underfunded in a way that HR is not allowed to invest in the leading bleeding edge technology, right? And so we are often late adopters of technology. In this one, though, we really have to understand it, or we will not be able to contribute to how people will thrive.
Are you seeing, any differences from different industries? Where some are more receptive to adopting RPA in the HR line, or versus others?
Yeah, I think that you see, clearly huge demand in financial services, in insurance, in healthcare. They have these massive volume processes, claims processing or loan processing or whatever it is that, and they have these massive processes that are people populated today and have enormous opportunities for error. And so that in those industries, that's low hanging fruit, right? I think what people misunderstand is that you don't have to think about a big, huge process and automate end to end. What you have to do is you take a look at a process and say, what is important that the human does? And what would I be happy if they didn't have to do? What would be more suitable to the automation? So we have processes that are a collaboration between a bot and a human. And so, the bot does several things. The human takes over. The human adds the value that the human should, and then the bot will take another piece of the process. It's not like I have to automate a whole thing. And I think that's one of the misconceptions people have about automation. In terms of resistance, there are lots of people say, well, you can't automate the work in my organization because it's too creative, it's too this, it's too that. Well, here's, one of our founders said this to me one day. He said, if I ask you what you do for a living, you will undoubtedly tell me the most complex thing. What do you do, Nancy? Oh, I'm the chief human resources. Well, what do you do? Well, I set strategy. I make big decisions. And then you say, but what else do you do? Well, I roll my sleeves up a little more when it comes to compensation, much to Forrest White's chagrin. But yes, I get a little more involved in that, so yeah, I'm more hands-on. And then what else? Oh yeah, then I have some work that's really deadly boring, whether it's cleaning out my inbox or, validating that the calendar's been set up. I actually want to do those meetings. Oh, a digital assistant could do some things for me and probably give me 15 to 20 to 25% of my time back in a day if I really thought about it. And so even those of us who think I'm far too strategic, I'm far too creative, I guarantee you there is a piece of your job. So it's not, you don't even have to think about those big, huge processes. You just have to think about, what do I hate about my own day? Because that's where the digital assistant has come. That's where we are. And you already have digital assistants, Siri is a digital assistant, Alexa is a digital assistant. So we're already used to using them at home and less used to using them in the workplace. But we have a whole generation of people who are about to come into the workplace that will think that we look incredibly antiquated because they're not allowed to use the same kinds of technology. I have a 14-year-old grandson who a year ago wrote a bot to keep his Minecraft game playing when he was at school. And so that's already part of his life. You think he's going to join the workplace in 7 or 8 years and not demand that same capability? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I've seen with my own, with my kids, similar things, scripting out their gameplay, if they need to, what do they call it? Grinding, when you have to work to build up your character. And then the other thing I've observed is, whenever I type in a search, my son is like, why aren't you just saying it, right? You can just speak that.
Yes.
Are you typing,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's how he uses it, right? He just says it out loud.
I'm 40 years in high tech, and my 14-year-old grandson just rolls his eyes. Oh, yeah. Oh, what are you doing here? He's just, he's humiliated by what a Luddite I am.
Yeah, it's funny. They have no appreciation for how far we've had to come.
No.
But there were a couple of questions that came in, I think, that are maybe good to review. One was about, how long does it take for a typical bot to be programmed? And maybe typical is hard to say, but you've had some specific experiences with that in your group. What kind of time commitment or how long are you talking about?
So of course we have to confirm this for me, but I think our most complex bot, which might be the comp bot, but maybe it's our talent acquisition or talent assessment bot, probably 5 to 6 weeks to build that. You can build a bot in an hour. Uh, Thank you, Forrest. Yes, you build about an hour. It depends on, kind of what it is you're trying to do. What you have to think about, though, when you apply this technology, and certainly our platform, don't think about it like, oh, I'm installing a big, it's not like a CRM system. It's not, it's not, that's not what it's like. You can get going very rapidly. I would say the Shalini, I don't know if she's on the call, but she could tell us how long it took to write the headcount bot. It was the first one we wrote. Maybe it took a week to because we were learning it ourselves in some way in terms of how do we get permission to go here and go there and go here and go there. The other thing that you have to remember about this technology is basically anything that the human can do going from system to system to system, the bot can do, right? It has its own identity. You give it its own codes, you give it its own passwords. It can't, 3 days, headcount bot took 3 days. That's what Shalini's telling me. And so I think people don't understand that it functions very much like a human. You can watch it do it. And often the way you teach it, and Forrest, maybe you can speak to this, is by having it watch what you do. And the way, right? So it observes you and then says, I think this is what you did. And you validate that, and then it does it. And so it's, it can be pretty low code in terms of, as a matter of fact, there's in many ways, it's no code. If I can write a bot, anyone can.
Well, that ties into one of the other questions asked, which is, are some people better suited for this work than others? Like I think Lynn, when she was asking, was impressed that you've got everyone in HR doing it. But are you finding that, well, some people gravitate to it and some people would rather have other people do it for them?
And interestingly enough, it was not predictable. Yeah. And so, I certainly thought, well, everybody, if Forrest runs the technology and automation group, of course, they're all going to write bots. It's going to be great. And, some of his folks that are committed to writing bots, they do it for a living. Of course, they have to do it. But some of the other folks in technology, they wrote some bots. But, then we had a guy who had a master's in OD sitting in India that I think he was writing a bot a day. He was just anything he could automate, he was going to do. It was just amazing. And he became so enthralled with it. So it wasn't predictable for me. It wasn't the people that I expected to have, propellers sticking out of their head.
Yeah. Are there types of bots or use cases that, you found that you should avoid trying to build or trying to address?
Boy, I'd have to that one. I would have to defer to Forrest. I can't think of anything that Forrest, have we stumbled and fallen, skinned our knees with building any bot, realizing no, we shouldn't?
We usually vet the ideas pretty thoroughly before we start building. One of the things if it's going to be somebody on my team that's going to build the automation instead of the person with the idea, we're usually having some sort of a, BA type conversation with them, understand the process, understand where the pain is, and then help them understand where automation can help serve them in that process. And part of that is sometimes reminding people that not every process has to be automated end to end. It can be a piece of a process. And so you can have collaboration between the automation and the person who would normally be doing that work. So it hands things to them and says, hey, I need an answer from a person for this step in the process, and then I'll take care of the rest for you. So, and I tried to write a response to this one as well, but we have collaboration, I should say, between our bots and our people. But bots aren't great at doing things that are artistic or using empathy, or right. They're rules-based programs. It's very user-friendly, as Nancy mentioned. There's a visual workflow, drag and drop, different steps. You can record your screen and the automation will watch you do something and it learns how to do it. So, it's very easy to sort of set these things up. And so, sometimes just having the smallest part of a task automated, that if it's something you've done frequently, and have the automation hand the rest of the process off to you, then you're off to the races.
Yes. And there's a question here about, can we reactivate it? Well, bots, they can either be attended, meaning that every time you want it to do something, you go tell it to do it. That's an attended bot, or an unattended bot, where a scheduled bot, so to speak, unattended. So it just happens on a schedule as you've told it to do that. Now, the thing about it is, Kelly, is you can retrain a bot, right? They're not like they get used up. And you can have a bot one bot do many, many things too. They have a capacity that you can fill. So one bot can do many, many things for you. So yeah, we retrain them. We retool them. When I say we retired a bot, it's simply we didn't need that thing to happen anymore. So we repurposed that bot for something else.
Yeah. That's kind of an interesting aspect, right? You don't have to rewrite it. You just write a new one and move on.
Again, it's like retraining a person, isn't it? I don't need you to do that anymore. So why don't you come learn to do this? And that's basically how you deal with bots. We're now writing our job descriptions. So we identify what's the human work and what's the work that would be suitable for a bot in every job. And we'll start to publish our job descriptions that way. We want to make certain that as people join the company, they know that they're going to get a personal digital assistant, and that there's things that they won't have to, like they would in other companies. They're not going to have to do those things here.
Right. That's an interesting selling point, right?
Yes.
Well, what I guess how are there measurement techniques you'd recommend to kind of for RPA to kind of keep people in tune with how to be successful, or to have a better sense of whether they are achieving that success?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of things that people think about in terms of how they want to measure an ROI on this, right? I mean, there's the time, of course, and there's, I think, the peace of mind knowing that, an audit isn't going to scare you because every single thing you do is audited by the bot, right? There's a trail for everything a bot does. And so you never, you sleep easily. There's all of those things. I think if there's, as I said, freeing up capacity, like in my organization, the ability not to have to hire some heads, we just could use the bots. We don't generally go and talk to people about, gee, you can save this many heads. That's not what we're thinking about. What we think about is what are the other things you can do when human beings don't have to behave as robots. And so it really is about, how we make humans first, how we make certain that, it's very human centric the way we come at this. So I don't like to talk about, gee, you can, get rid of 4 heads. That's not the point here. What has happened with us is every single bot we've ever written has promoted a human being into a better job. Every single bot has promoted some human being into more interesting work. And I haven't had to worry about retraining anybody. The truth is, once they got rid of doing that mundane work, they had ideas about what they should do next anyway. And so again, they had their own if only list. And so that's not been the issue. But so, we do measure it on again, the capacity we've freed up. We certainly have customers who measure it on money that they've saved and time they've saved, and it can be astonishing what automation can save folks. One of the things that we're measuring in the coming year that we're trying to sort out how we're going to measure is the depth and quality of the analytics we can get to. Often you collect data and you collect it for a couple of purposes and you look at it that way, and then you realize later, gee, it's really rich with other things, and I just don't have time to go back and mine it that way. Well, it's amazing what a bot can do for you. And so that's the kind of thing that, we're trying to pull more bots into. And that's a real measure for me is, am I getting more, I'll say, more capacity out of the work I'm already doing?
Right. No, I think those are good points. There's a question coming in from the audience about, what is the training, to learn how to create your own bot? Like, what's the right training to do? Is it available for anyone, or is it only in automation anywhere, or was it customized for your own team?
Well, I put folks through the training that is available through Automation Anywhere University. And Automation Anywhere University you can find, and there's a community section, and the community section is a free program for learning how to build a bot. And so everyone can go and kind of test it and play around with it and see if that works for them. I put our folks through the 8-hour training program that also comes through Automation Anywhere University. Forrest, what do you think is the training time? Let's say for someone who's going to build a bot as a profession. We have 2 people that build bots full time for us now, because we have a big backlog and continuous, and we're in the business. We really need to automate as much as we can. So,
well, I'll say when I joined, I went through a 1-week bot training session, and it was everything I needed to get going on creating pretty much any kind of automation I could need. At that point, putting into practice has helped solidify those skills. But we have various levels of certifications that we offer as well through Automation Anywhere University. So if it's important to you that you want to have the, as part of your career building, that you want to say, hey, I'm an RPA developer, I'm a master RPA developer, we have some different certifications available there also.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add it to the chat so everybody has access to our university.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah, and I can attest that, for our own team, right? It's how we get people started if they haven't been exposed to automation anywhere before, right? We get them started with the basics. And I think the first thing to learn is, a bit about how to go looking for good opportunities for automation. That's one of the key skills that anyone in your work can learn is
right.
how to find an opportunity, right?
How to think about it. It's when we converted to Workday. We had been on Bamboo HRS, and we moved to Workday. One of the things we did, they give you a process for looking at, what will the manager do? What will the employee do? What are the roles of the HR person in this? So there's a map, and Forrest built a whole new map for what should the bot do. And so, and again, Workday says that they have automation inside Workday, but they don't have anything that goes outside Workday. And so we said, hey, the bot can go and validate this information here, and it can go get this information from there. And so we had a whole work stream that then took a lot of stuff off the manager, some stuff off the employee, but a heck of a lot of the stuff out of the HR intervention. And so just coming through that process was a great way to build out, probably 200 backlog at that point of bots that will ultimately get built.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of fascinating aspect of the problem about how much you can how much of that load you can lift once you get down to it. You have another question I thought was kind of interesting. A lot of people will talk about AI. How do you view AI as part of what the bots do? And I know, from my perspective, there are a couple of areas where I look at it, but really, the thing about AI is it's kind of sprinkle. It's like, pixie dust, you can kind of sprinkle across a solution to make various parts of it more resilient to change or produce a better result than what you would start with. And maybe as an example, I'd say, when you're scanning documents to pull information out, structured or unstructured, you can use machine learning, which is a subset of AI, to examine those documents, pull the data out that you want, and then give it to the bots to decide how to push that data into your operational processes. But
that's exactly right.
There are other things we should be thinking about for, sprinkling some of that AI pixie dust.
It's funny that I think there's the hierarchy of thinking is you say, what's the process? How do I get that done? And then you start to say, what else should I be looking for or learning from this? Or what else could I do with this? Right. So what can I, to your point, what can I give the bot? Only about, 30% of the data in the world is structured. The rest of it is unstructured data. And that really is where AI, right now, that is the largest use case, right? We have a technology that, yes, it knows the difference between a zip code and a purchase order number, right? And then it learns other things. And so anytime you have that once you have a technology that can learn and can not just have to do if-then equation, but it can say, I think this is this, if-then, but this I think is close enough that I'm going to use it. It extrapolates from there. So I think that the true AI, go ahead. Yeah.
I'll give another example just in a very general way, right? If you're looking at a problem and you kind of, given a specific case, you kind of know what to do, but you'd be hard pressed to write all the rules down and
Mm-hmm.
say, this is how I would decide what to do.
Right.
If you can't write all the rules in advance, either because you don't know, it's not my area of expertise, or because the people I'm asking can't articulate it or they don't know, maybe the information is too, the expertise is too distributed, then you might be looking at a case where machine learning could really apply, because you can sort of take, well, we've done 100,000 of these over the last few years. We could look at the data we already have, and from that infer what the rules might be,
Right.
rather than decide up front what they are, right?
And
And that's a kind of generalized view, right?
right. And while our brain is an association engine, that is what our brain does. It associates one thing with another. Sometimes when there's such a large amount of data, we don't see the pattern as quickly as a bot does. And so like patterns of exceptions, the bot can learn and tell you about, and then you can refine your process. And so that's one of those things that, and even we are still just starting to explore that. Like everyone else, we went to low hanging fruit. What's the more sophisticated thing? Okay, now what do we get to do? How do we really drive this thing? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's kind of a related question about, can bots analyze a video feed? And I think, I think the answer to something like that is, well, they could be part of that. Like, what will you do once, if you've had some machine vision, right? Like artificial vision, look at a video feed for data to pull out of it, or in conclusions to draw. What do you do with those? And that's really where it's the sort of then what, that is kind of how I think about what to do with the bots, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there are some interesting use cases around that, where we've had, one of our clients looks at how to look at video encodings of testimony and then find the right spot,
Mm-hmm.
with the transcript and the video, so you can either read it or watch it, and find the right place. So there's some interesting stuff to do with video,
Yes.
but it's not strictly an RPA problem, right? It's more of an and, you
That's
put
right.
those two together.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That is exactly.
What, in your view, what are the most successful RPA programs doing right now? We talked about some great examples, but what do you think they're doing when they're the most successful?
If I look across, not just us, but our customer base, and look at some of the organizations, and like, incredibly impressed with their creativity and what they're doing. I think that, the most successful organizations that I see are making the bot human partnership pretty transparent, right? It's a matter of, so I'll say it this way. In the future, I think that, not having automation like this, and when I say the future, I think in 2 years, people are going to think that's as odd as not having an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that the most sophisticated customers are the ones that have just relaxed into it. And, we can make things be problems, so we can look like we're geniuses solving the problems. And I think that on this particular technology, it's the concept of, how do I embrace it and understand that I should not be making it harder than it should. It's not hard. Don't make it harder than it is. It's not hard. And that's what I find. So Dell does a spectacular job. Oh my goodness, they're great at this. And it's because they just said, we're going to just try this against everything. We're just going to try to automate as much as we can and see what works. And if something doesn't work, well, here's what I'll tell you. I've never seen anyone turn off an automation, ever. We don't have one example of anyone who's automated a process who ever went back to a manual process. And so the most sophisticated folks are the ones, it's an attitude that creates sophistication, not how clever they're being about their bots.
Right. Now, I think it's a really good point. It's more about the sort of culture of self-improvement, right? And
right.
That growth mindset of, how do we keep getting better? How do we keep turning the wheel? And
that's right.
Maybe that first turn is a little harder, but once you get it moving, it really works.
One of the thrilling parts of this for me is that it's in the hands of the human resources function. When you adopt a new software product, generally you're following their, Workday has process you follow. Oracle has a process you follow, and they've already defined the solutions, and you're going to force fit your stuff into it. That is not what that's not what happens here, right? That's not what's going on here. Here you have the ultimate ability to manage and control and create what you want to happen with this technology. And it is absolutely agnostic about whatever other software you're using. It'll do whatever you need it to do. And so it's suddenly you're liberated in how you get to think about all this stuff, and how you're going to get your systems to work together.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful for our business as BP3, right? This is kind of how we got our start, was helping clients understand their business processes, how to manage those processes, how to define them in ways that leverage their key differentiators over the competition or the market. And and I think having that flexibility is what gives you differentiation for your culture, for the way you go about doing your business. So I think it's really critical. I know there's another camp that says no, push everything into name your tool, right? SAP.
Exactly.
Oracle, and
exactly.
That's another path.
Yes, but I personally find it kind of limiting. Yeah. And again, those softwares were created in the industrial age mode of saying the human being's job is to feed my beast and make certain my beast can work, as opposed to, this is the first technology I've seen that says, how do I make the human better? I serve the human, bots serve the human, and it becomes a human-centric environment then. And consequently, human resources will lead with humanity in the future, right? A bot, as Forrest said, a bot can't care. Only a human can care. And so when in the future, we're going to be leading with empathy and care, and the bots are going to be doing all that stuff that has made us look as though we're hyper analytic and ultra cold and non-human at all. And it also moves, it makes truth the statement of humans are our most important asset. And I have to tell you, if I'll tell you what your litmus test is around that one. If your company runs into trouble, and they take all their capital equipment and go put it in the parking lot, you've never seen that happen, have you? We've never seen anybody come and get in trouble and put all their computers and everything out in the parking lot, but they do it with their people. So really, what is the more important asset, right? If we're willing to go put our people out in the parking lot, other people come get it, but we're not willing to do that with all this heavy equipment and software, the industrial age mentality, that's really the important piece, and the people have been there to feed it. This shifts this turns it around. This is the most human-centric technology that's been created.
Yeah. Well, you're right. When the fire alarm goes off, we might grab our laptops, but we're not grabbing all the other stuff and bringing it with us, right? We're just worried about people.
Yes, that's right.
I might be a little really attached to my laptop, I'll admit. But
my phone, I think, is
right. Yeah.
I'll come back for the family pictures.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
There's another question here. I guess is more directed at me. The question around, I guess the way it was phrased is, I've heard from others that they struggle with bots breaking when things change in your systems, or as time goes by, right? Just some brittleness. And I think, for my part, and I'm sure Nancy has observed that there is some truth to that, right? Because they are like people, they're emulating what a person would do in the same situation, but they're a little less clever when things change. We might see, the button moved, and we know that it's still the leave call button, even if it moves. But also, don't we often, when they move the buttons around, you hit the wrong one, right? And if iOS changes the hang up versus the answer, order of buttons, or they change the colors or something like that, we might hit the wrong one a few times and hang up on people. So we make those mistakes. Our bots will sometimes get tripped up by changes like that as well. And so that's a fair, I think, concern. Just like if you wrote software against an API, now the person publishing that API shouldn't change it, at least not very often. And when they do, it should be very well known in advance, all that. But it isn't always. And so when it changes and it surprises you, then your API call will break, and you have to fix that. And maybe the question to us was sort of, is managing those bots something that BP3 does, or do we use our people to monitor them? How do you know when things break or aren't running correctly? And I would say look, just quickly, yes, we do offer that service to our clients. I think it's just really important that, partly because we stand by what we build. Our motto is more focus, more foresight, more follow-up. And that more follow-up aspect is everything we build, we stand behind, and we will support for our clients. We'll even support things that they build if they'll let us, right? We'll support things that they build because we think that's part of what makes us different. And as far as knowing when they're not working, you can get pretty far with, who watches the watcher, right? So if the bots are running, who watches the bots? Well, you can have another bot watch the bots. And so we automate a fair bit of that monitoring. And then you have to have some different kind of monitoring just to make sure software is up and available and the network is up and available. But that monitoring is super critical for us to do our job well, which is to be proactive about responding to your issues rather than waiting for you to file a ticket or tell us that something went wrong. For example, there was an AWS outage the other day, and our team knew about it right away. Right, we didn't have to wait for a client to complain or tell us that something went wrong. We knew it was a problem very quickly because we have our own monitoring in place. And so you want a partner, that thinks about things that way, that thinks a few steps ahead. Because those problems do exist. And I will say it helps working with A360, right? It's in the cloud. So there's a whole class of downtime issues that go away because of that. Yeah. But there's also your own software, right? And your own systems, your own software running in the cloud that you need to interact with and integrate with. So it's still a complex world out there. And we're here to, try to make it simpler so you can focus on the people and focus on the business, right?
Once you think of bots as digital colleagues, you just have to think, if I change the software on a colleague, I would have to tell them and show them how to do it. It's the same thing with your bot. You're going to have it's a little retraining. It's
one of my clients described their bots as people with really narrow job functions.
Yes, exactly. We name our bots.
Yeah.
We name all of our bots, and so there, it's a competition around, how to name them, and it does keep you thinking about, do I have to retrain Harry Potter? Does bot Benatar have to be retrained? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Did he really just say bot Benatar? Is that it?
Yes, and Forrest did that one.
That's an awesome one. That's an awesome name for a bot. Look, I guess maybe one more question I think is a good one to touch on is just in using RPA and automation in HR. Does it benefit other parts of the business, or is this really about HR? How do you see that?
RPA benefits every part of the business. It's I think that finance is generally the first place it goes to. Customer support, though, my goodness, it's it's just astonishing what it does there. Every part of the business is benefited by automation, and we have seen every piece of the value chain for your customers have automation enhance that.
Yeah. But I mean, even in just the automations that you've done in HR, do you feel like that spillover of value?
Oh gosh, yes. I think we have dramatically better employee experience as they onboard. I think that our managers, obviously, we're about to give our managers the enormous gift of not having to scratch their head and say, what should I be doing for this person? Where are they in the world? We are about to give them that roadmap. Yes, I think every bit of automation we've created has allowed my folks to be more engaged with the business. And that is just enormous benefit to the business every time.
Yeah. Well, I think that is my view, anytime you can have HR working better, it's going to have ancillary benefit to the rest of the business.
That's exactly
sometimes
right.
Very material benefit, but that experience benefit, right, of having your team able to support the folks you bring on. And we had this in our company. We did an acquisition earlier this year, and they were really kind of raving about the attention they got from our team onboarding them, and specifically the HR team. And I think the ability to have that mental energy and emotional energy to, care about each person you're bringing on and really listen to them and what their concerns are and help them,
yes,
make sure they're landing right, they're getting they're signed up for the right healthcare plan and that sort of thing. Some of that comes from knowing that, the administrivia is automated on the back end, that it's handled well. You've got good systems supporting you.
That's right. I think yes, absolutely. We've gotten just a huge shift in the net promoter scores we get from brand new employees about our onboarding process since we put so much automation into it. Because the human interaction is so much better. The human interaction is about the things they really care about. And that, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It does make a huge difference. Again, we move humanity and caring in front of the technology. It's a very different experience.
Well, I am so grateful to have you join us today, Nancy.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been awesome talking with you and sitting down with you leading into the holiday, and hopefully everyone enjoyed a little bit of pie as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's also take a moment to thank everyone for joining us. I know it's time out of your day. Everybody's busy and jumping from Zoom to Zoom or Teams to Teams and Teams to Zooms and back and forth. We just really appreciate it, guys. And and I should update. I got a note here that we have a winner for the Beats ear pods, and the winner is Adam Favreau. So congratulations, Adam. Apparently of A-Team fame, if I'm reading the chat correctly. So
you go.
Congratulations. Yes. We'll email you shortly to get your shipping info. Make sure you get it. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and got some great information and useful information from Nancy and us. Be sure to be on the lookout tomorrow for a follow-up email with today's recording in case you want to share it with others, or you wanted to catch something. If you missed something, you can find it again. And thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays.